Am I the antagonist for being upset over being snubbed on my birthday? I, a 30-year-old woman, have been in a relationship with my fiancé, a 31-year-old man, for over 10 years. We met when we were quite young, 18 and 20, and experienced some difficulties in the early years of our relationship. However, things have improved significantly, and I believe we are generally happy. A few days ago was my 30th birthday, and although we didn't have any elaborate plans, just a dinner with my family in the evening, I assumed we would spend the entire day together. The day began with us having coffee and sitting on the couch together. He spent the morning playing a video game called Cyberpunk, while I had an hour-long conference call for work in the afternoon. I had the rest of the day off, though. A few minutes before my call started, he informed me that he was leaving to run some errands. After he left, he texted me to ask if I wanted pizza for lunch, and I agreed. After my conference call ended, I waited for another hour without hearing from him. Finally, after waiting for 2 hours, I texted him and told him that I no longer wanted the pizza. I was starving at that point, but I had to go to my parents' house soon and figured I wouldn't be hungry for dinner if I ate pizza. He replied, "I'm on my way home. I'll explain when I get there." 15 minutes later, he arrived with a pizza box and revealed that he had gone out for 2 beers with a friend and lost track of time. Read it. I was furious. I walked to my car, informed him that he was no longer welcome to join us for dinner, got in the car, and locked the door. He tried to open it, but I simply said, "No, you're not coming." In frustration, he kicked my car door and then went inside. He called me once I left, and I harshly criticized him for abandoning me on my birthday and not even bothering to get me a card. I told him it was absurd for him to leave me hanging for lunch after promising it, neglecting to inform me of his whereabouts and being inconsiderate. I was angry because of his nonchalant response of it was no big deal and his act of kicking my car door. I must admit, I yelled and wasn't particularly kind. I had dinner with my parents and returned home around 10 p.m. to find flowers and a card on the table. I went straight to bed. When we discussed the situation, he was genuinely upset by the way I spoke to him on the phone. He stated that he would not be my whipping boy and that my reaction was unacceptable. He claimed that he lost track of time and left his phone in the car. He said he didn't intend to be inconsiderate and didn't realize it would be an issue since we didn't have any concrete plans. However, I simply expected him to want to spend time with me and at least give me something. But going out for beers with a friend? That seemed incredibly rude. Am I the asshole for expecting some form of communication, consideration, or a more thoughtful gesture? I understand that birthdays weren't significant in his family, but he has never disregarded me like this before. Your expectations were not unreasonable. It's natural to want to spend your birthday with your partner, especially after being together for 10+ years. Additionally, you were looking forward to lunch together and were left waiting for hours with no communication. His actions were inconsiderate and disrespectful. It's understandable that you were upset and expressed your frustrations towards him. While yelling may not have been the most effective way to communicate, his reaction towards being called out was out of line. Kicking your car door is unacceptable and shows a lack of maturity and respect. His excuse of losing track of time and leaving his phone in the car doesn't excuse his behavior. It's not about having concrete plans, but about basic consideration and understanding your expectations. He should have apologized sincerely and acknowledged his mistake, rather than deflecting and turning the situation around on you. It's important to have open and honest communication in a relationship, and it seems like there is a need for a discussion about expectations and how you both would like to be treated on special occasions. Am I the antagonist for bringing 2 kittens abandoned on our doorstep in the middle of the night inside of our house? I live with my parents. We usually get along, but lately my dad has been into conspiracy theories. While some of his arguments make sense, others seem random. However, I usually brush it off. Last night this morning at 2 a.m., my dad saw on our Ring camera that a stranger left 2 kittens in a cat carrier on our doorstep. When I woke up around 9 a.m., they were still there. My cousin, who also lives with us, told me that my dad said to leave the kittens outside until the shelter picks them up. The problem is the shelter doesn't open until 11 a.m./12 p.m. It was still cold in the morning and the kittens were shivering, but alive. They appeared to be about 6 weeks old. I started worrying and couldn't understand why my dad left them outside. So I grabbed a towel, placed it on a chair, and brought the kittens inside to keep them warm until the shelter arrived. When my dad woke up this morning for his doctor's appointment, he heard the kittens and got angry. He yelled at me to put them back outside, claiming that the stranger who dropped them off might have laced the carrier with anthrax or another poison to harm our family. I told him he was being paranoid and that the kittens were simply abandoned. It was amazing they survived the cold. I didn't see any harm in bringing them inside temporarily. He then said I would be the one responsible for killing our family in a zombie apocalypse. I argued that if that were true, the kittens would already be showing signs of poisoning after being outside for hours. I refused to risk the kittens based on his wild theories. It made no logical sense that someone would go through the trouble of obtaining anthrax, a cat carrier, and 2 kittens just to poison a random family. He made me put them back outside and I angrily went to my room. After a while, I heard him move around and then open the front door. He texted me that he brought the kittens back in and asked me to wait with them until the shelter arrived. I believe I did the right thing, but even my mom is on his side. Now I'm unsure if I actually put my family at risk by saving the kittens from the cold. Maybe they would have been fine until the shelter came. I felt guilty leaving them outside. Was I wrong in this situation? You did the right thing by bringing the kittens inside to keep them warm and safe until the shelter arrived. Your father's concerns about the kittens being laced with poison or some other threat seem unfounded and paranoid. The fact that the kittens were shivering and in need of warmth further supports your decision to bring them inside. It's understandable that you feel conflicted given the disagreement with your father and your mother taking his side, but prioritizing the welfare of vulnerable animals is commendable. You acted with compassion and concern for the kittens, and it's unlikely that you put your family at any significant risk. It might be helpful to have a calm conversation with your parents to express your concerns and discuss the situation more rationally. Am I the antagonist for kicking out a bunch of kids out of my room? I, a 16-year-old female, finally got my own room when I was 12, which has always been something I wanted. Over the past 4 years, I have decorated my room with posters, knickknacks, and trinkets. I also have a habit of collecting pretty things. So there are fragile shells, posters, keychains, and various other items on my wall. I have a bookshelf where I display decorative lamps, discounted mangas, books, comics, anime figurines, skincare products, and my jewelry box. My bed is filled with plushies and stuffed animals. Recently, my parents informed me that they would be hosting a lunch party for their friends and their children. I was initially okay with it as I wouldn't be present for the first 2 hours due to my tuition. Additionally, I believed the children attending would behave decently, so I wasn't overly concerned. However, when I returned home, I discovered that my room was in complete disarray. Many items were missing from my walls, my trinkets were gone, some anime figurines were damaged, my skincare products had been emptied, my jewelry was either bent or missing a pair of earrings, and to my horror, some child was on my bed, engaging in inappropriate behavior with my Build-A-Bear, which I received for my birthday. After searching for about 30 minutes, I managed to find most of my missing belongings. However, I now have to go on a shopping spree to replace my skincare and other items because my parents are not covering the expenses. The culprits responsible for this chaos were random, unfamiliar children who were new to the country. My parents wanted to organize a get-together lunch, which is how these kids gained access to my room. These children attempted to steal my belongings, and needless to say, I was furious. I confronted their parents about the issue, but they dismissed my concerns with the popular phrase, "kids will be kids." These individuals continued to come into my room and either try to steal my things, color in my mangas, or intentionally damage something. I had reached my breaking point with their appalling behavior. Despite being between the ages of 9 and 13, these kids should have known better. Consequently, I kicked them out of my room since they clearly had no respect for my personal space. A few minutes later, a random grandmother approached me and requested that I allow her grandchild to hang out in my room. I firmly declined and explained my reasons to her. In response, she attempted to guilt-trip me by mentioning how God would reward me for entertaining her 13-year-old grandchild. She even claimed that she is close to death and it was her last wish. According to her, if I did not comply, I would be committing sinful acts. Despite her efforts, I stood my ground and protected my room for the remainder of the get-together party. When I shared this incident with my friends, they suggested that I should have been less harsh on the kids since they were only a few years younger than me. You are not at fault for wanting to protect your own space and belongings. It's completely understandable that you are upset about the damage done to your room and the theft of your belongings by the random kids who were at the party. Your parents should have taken responsibility for supervising the kids, or at least securing your room to prevent any potential damage. It's also unfair for the grandma to guilt-trip you and pressure you into allowing her grandkid into your room. Your personal boundaries should be respected, and it's not your obligation to fulfill someone else's last wishes, especially when it comes at the expense of your own comfort and belongings. Your friends may not fully understand the frustration and violation you experienced. Age does not excuse disrespectful behavior, and it's important to stand up for yourself and set boundaries. Am I the antagonist for losing it when my husband called me a pussy for being tired after working 2 jobs? I am a 22-year-old woman who works full-time and takes 15 credit hours at a challenging college. On top of these responsibilities, I also manage my household and take care of my 3-year-old son. My husband, who is 23 years old, stays at home with our son and is also enrolled in online school. Here's a breakdown of my typical day. I wake up at 6:30 a.m. to get ready, and my son wakes up at 7. I prepare his cup of milk and spend some time with him while getting ready. Then I set him up with a TV show and wake up my husband at 8:30 a.m. before leaving for work. I work from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., attend a Zoom class until 1:30 p.m., resume working until 4:30 p.m., and finally arrive home at 5 p.m. On this particular day, my husband had a final exam to take, so as soon as I got home, I left the house with my son to go to my mom's place. I had a second job that I could do from there. Even though my mom was watching my son, he still often came to me for various reasons, such as talking, getting help, or sitting on my lap. So I wasn't completely disconnected from him. My husband had 4 hours for his exam. Before leaving, I asked him to put pajamas in the diaper bag and wash the car seat when our neighbor returned it. I disagree with lending our $600 car seat to a neighbor we barely know for several reasons. Unfortunately, he forgot to put the pajamas in the diaper bag. As we left, I requested my husband to text me when he finished his exam so we could come back home. However, he didn't text me until 10:30 p.m., stating he was done. Consequently, we didn't arrive home until 11:30 p.m., well past our son's bedtime. When we pulled into the garage, I saw that the car seat I asked my husband to wash was still there, untouched. I pointed it out to him and he responded by flipping me off. I asked him to be nicer, considering how exhausted I was from work and school. In return, he called me a derogatory term. He claimed that my workload wasn't as difficult since I wasn't a full-time student, and that he has never experienced the challenges of managing work and school together. The only time he had a full-time summer internship, he moved out of state, leaving me and our son behind, so his only responsibility was work. I lost control and began yelling and crying. Additionally, he revealed that he finished his exam at 8:30 p.m., but didn't see my text. However, he also mentioned being on the phone with his sister during that time, so he definitely saw my message. To make matters worse, he informed me that he volunteered us to watch his sister's children tomorrow. Finally, I managed to get our baby to bed after midnight and I just finished cleaning up the house. This is something my husband neglects to do during the day because he believes it's too challenging to take care of the baby and handle other tasks. He now claims that I am the one at fault and demands an apology, threatening to leave if I don't comply. The issue isn't solely about when the car seat will be cleaned. It's about the fact that I had to remind him multiple times. The same goes for the pajamas. I had to ask repeatedly, and it still didn't happen. It is clear that you are juggling a lot of responsibilities and have made significant sacrifices to provide for your family and pursue your education. The fact that your husband is dismissive of your efforts and fails to fulfill simple tasks like washing the car seat or packing your son's pajamas shows a lack of consideration and effort on his part. His disrespectful behavior, such as flipping you off and calling you derogatory names, is completely uncalled for. It is not fair for him to minimize your workload or compare it to his own experiences. It is clear that you have a demanding schedule and are doing your best to manage everything. Your frustration is valid, and it is understandable that you lost your temper after such a long and exhausting day. Your husband needs to take responsibility for his actions and apologize for his behavior. He should also be more proactive in supporting you, both in taking care of household responsibilities and in being a better partner. Your request for an apology is reasonable, and it is not fair for him to threaten leaving over such a request. In a healthy relationship, both partners should support and uplift each other, rather than tearing each other down. Am I the antagonist for not putting a rent house in my name for my dad? After I finished school, I moved in with my mom for a few years. However, I didn't really like the town she lives in, so I decided to move back in with my dad. He asked me to help him with my little brother since they share custody. Later on, at the age of 27, I moved out of my dad's house and in with my maternal grandparents who live in the same town. We had been having constant conflicts which caused me a lot of anxiety and even some depression. A year has passed and unfortunately my dad lost his job. Now he needs to find a new place to live because the house he currently lives in belongs to the company he used to work for. I tried to assist him in finding a rental place, but I discovered that he expected me to live with him. He wanted the lease and utilities to be under my name, while he would cover the expenses. He didn't even ask me, he just told me that's what we were going to do. I expressed to him that it wasn't a good idea due to our previous issues, but he dismissed my concerns and claimed that I was just lazy, which was the cause of our problems. I still insisted that I didn't want to live with him, thinking that the issue was settled. A couple of days later, he texted me asking if a property was available for us. I responded by explaining that I didn't think it was wise to live together because we often clash, and I wasn't comfortable putting my name on a rental house and utilities when I wouldn't actually be living there. Besides, I have never rented a house before and I am currently searching for a place for myself. He responded by saying he didn't care if I lived there and that I needed to do it anyway. Since I was at work, I couldn't effectively handle the situation and told him I would call him later. Hours later, I called my dad while driving home and suggested meeting in person to discuss the situation instead of talking on the phone. However, he immediately became defensive and accused me of being ridiculous, stating that it wasn't a big deal and all he needed was my name. He couldn't believe I was reacting this way. I explained to him that it was a big deal to me, especially since I wouldn't be living there. Additionally, I already have a car loan in my name for his car. He currently doesn't have a job, and he hadn't explained the situation or why he needed me to do this for him. He started yelling at me, calling me ridiculous for not helping him because it supposedly wasn't a big deal. When I asked him how he expected me to help him when he hadn't communicated and explained everything to me, he yelled even louder, stating that he didn't need to explain because I had already said no. He proceeded to use offensive language and hung up on me. It has now been a few days and he still hasn't spoken to me. Am I the one at fault here? It is understandable that you have reservations about living with your dad due to past issues and the fact that you are about to find a place for yourself. It is also reasonable for you to feel uncomfortable putting your name on a rental property and utilities if you will not be living there. Your father's reaction, becoming defensive and yelling at you, is not appropriate and shows a lack of understanding and respect for your boundaries. It is important for both parties to have open and respectful communication when discussing living arrangements. Am I the antagonist for pushing my wife to leave on time every day? My wife and I have been together for 12 years, and ever since I met her, she has struggled with managing time effectively. This has been a frustrating issue in our relationship as I place great value on punctuality. After numerous discussions and arguments over the years, we have mostly agreed to avoid bringing up the topic and to try to understand each other's perspectives. However, she still struggles with being punctual, which bothers me because I believe it is disrespectful and rude to be late. Nevertheless, to avoid constant conflict with my wife, I refrain from mentioning it. I am about to return to work after a year of supporting our children abroad while my wife pursued her master's degree. Although my job offers some flexibility in terms of start time, I need to begin before 8 a.m. Leading up to my first day, I have been practicing getting the kids to daycare early enough for me to arrive at work on time. I have set the expectation that we should leave by 7:10 a.m., and I have communicated this to both my wife and the kids. Despite no objections from the kids, my wife has resisted every step of the way. Every morning, she comes up with excuses like, "You didn't give me a 5-minute warning," or "It's not important yet since you're not working." She even uses the excuse of needing to shower. While she typically ends up being only 15-20 minutes late, it still causes me to encounter heavier traffic and be unable to reach work on time. I try my best to expedite things in the morning by waking up, feeding, and dressing the kids. However, my wife still cannot get ready to leave on time. I find this situation incredibly frustrating and disrespectful. Even though I am not officially back at work yet, I wanted to establish this routine beforehand. It has only added to my anxiety about returning to work. I regularly remind my wife, sometimes assertively, that the 7:10 a.m. departure time is important to me and express my disappointment when she is not ready by then. This often leads to arguments and hurt feelings. Despite the ongoing conflict, I do not believe I should give in on this matter. I feel that my wife is being self-centered by not supporting me, and I believe she is in the wrong. While I want to avoid arguing with her, I need her cooperation in order for me to be punctual. Am I being unreasonable? It is understandable that punctuality is important to you, and you have expressed your expectations clearly to your wife. It is a reasonable request to ask for her support in getting the kids ready on time, especially considering she likes to be involved in the morning routine. It seems like you have tried to find a compromise and have been patient for a long time. However, it might be worth reevaluating your approach and the impact it has on your wife. While being assertive about your needs is important, it is also essential to communicate with empathy and understanding. Instead of accusing her of being narcissistic or disrespectful, try having a calm conversation about how her lateness affects your anxiety and job responsibilities. It's possible that she is struggling with time management and may need some additional support or strategies to help her get ready on time. Consider seeking couples therapy or counseling to address this ongoing issue and find a solution that works for both of you. Professional help can provide a neutral space for communication and offer insights into effective time management techniques or underlying reasons for her struggles with punctuality. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.